Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for your joining this class. Today, we are going to talk about the fiscal regime and the revenue management. I hope it will be interesting for all of you. And this week is special week for the United States. Most probably you heard about the Thanksgiving. The US population is going to celebrate Thanksgiving. Here to this Thanksgiving, I would like to say that happy Thanksgiving, Charlie. As I know, Charlie originally from the United States, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you.
Charlie, could you briefly inform us because I am in United States, but I am not originally from United States. But I know this the holiday is very special holiday for the United States, the family. Could you briefly inform us what it means the Thanksgiving, how the US families celebrate the Thanksgiving?
Sure. In normal years, extended families would come together and share a meal. When I was a child and an adult for like 30 years, we used to go up to my mother's sister's family in Rhode Island, and there would be like 15 of us that would stay for a few days and share meals and get to see each other. But obviously this year that isn't happening. COVID is very widespread in the United States right now. And we actually invited members of our family to come and join us, but nobody, even doing testing and quarantine ahead of time, but nobody wanted to do that. So we're going to just have two friends over. But the history of Thanksgiving is interesting. When I was a child, I was taught it was a celebration of the indigenous people who welcomed the first British settlers, or not the first British settlers, but early British settlers in Massachusetts. And it turns out that wasn't at all what it was like, that the British were very brutal to the indigenous people. And there were a few indigenous people who thought maybe it was better to deal with them than not to deal with them and just to be slaughtered. But it was, it's now celebrated as a day of mourning among indigenous people in the United States. It's not a celebration at all.
Are you going to celebrate in Timor-Leste?
We're having two friends come over, assuming that our tests, my wife and I had COVID tests on Friday and we haven't gotten the results yet. But if our results are negative and our friends just had negative tests and all of us have not gone out of the house since we had the test, so we wouldn't be exposed to anybody. If that all works out, then yes, we're going to have two friends come over and we'll be outside as much as we can, but the weather's cold, so we'll be inside some of the time.
Happy Thanksgiving, Padre.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mert. Thank you for your happy holiday. And I hope the other countries also they celebrate the similar holiday, but it's not exactly the Thanksgiving. Maybe now in my country also we have in Somalia country also we have the Nowruz, this national holiday. Also the family celebrate every year the 21st March. Today, as I said, we are going to take up three questions. How do government generate revenue from extractive industry? And what are the criteria for a good fiscal regime? And how the government balance the aims of maximizing fiscal revenues and attracting investment? We are going to take up three questions during today's lesson. Let me first share the presentation and then start discussion. And now you are familiar in the different fiscal regime in the different countries, because it depends also the legal regime, what kind of the legal regime the country impose during the cooperation with the foreign companies. Okay, now we have the presentation, and during the presentation we are going to focus the fiscal regimes and the fiscal tools, challenges of the revenue management, and then in the end of the presentation we will try response about how the optimal saving, spending, and the public debit and earmarking. And as I said during our presentation, we will take up 3 questions. I want one more time repeat these questions. How do government generate revenue from the extractive industry? What are the criteria for a good fiscal regime? And how the government balance the aims, maximizing fiscal revenues and attracting the investment? Let me first start how the government generated the revenue from the extractive industries. And this part of presentation, we will talk about the fiscal regime. And now I want to open discussion, and I want to ask you, what do you mean by the fiscal regime? Could you add your opinion in the chat box, or if you want, you can also open the microphone, also say something about what do you mean by the fiscal regimes? What are the different ways to collect revenues? Who is going to share first? What it means the fiscal regimes for the extractive industries? Okay, let me explain, but then you will also join the discussion. And the fiscal regime for oil, gas, or minerals is set of the interrelated legal, regulatory, and the contractual instrument through which the state share in the revenue generated by the extractive project. For instance, royalties, taxes, production sharing, and the state participation. Since the revenues are often the biggest benefit of extraction to the state, getting the fiscal regime right is crucial. Now we have one reflection coming from the Charlie. Thank you so much, Charlie. In the most countries, oil and the gas minerals under the ground belong to the state, correct? And when the state contract with companies, they need to find a way to share the value of the resources. Exactly. Thank you so much. And now we are going to discuss how they are going to share the value of the resources. The fundamental objective of the fiscal regime design is to maximize the economic return to the state from its resource endowment, because the Charlie also mentioned that in most countries, oil, gas, minerals under the ground belong to the state. And that's why it's very important to design the regime of fiscal, how they maximize the economic returns. But this does not mean that the best regime for a country is necessarily the one with the highest possible tax burden. Tax too little, and you may end up poorer after resources are depleted. Tax too much, and investor may look elsewhere. That's why we should find some optimal ways for the define our fiscal regime. And let me first give you some principles, some core values. how the objective and the criteria of the fiscal regime should be. And first, they capture a fair share of the rent for the state, allow reasonable return for the investors, because investor also should satisfy the fiscal regime. And if not, the investor will leave the country. Be enforceable and easily administrated is very important. Also easily administrated. Provide a relatively stable and predictable revenues. Also is very important because it's not for the long-term period. It should be not short-term period. It should be the long run, and be robust and flexible in changing circumstances. This is the the main objective for the fiscal regime, and we can say that this objective also defined in the Natural Research Charter. So the Natural Research Charter received for defined tax regime and the contractual terms should enable the government to realize the full value of its resources, consistent with the attracting necessary investment, and should be robust to changing circumstances. On the basis of this definition, we have the 5 main objectives for the fiscal regime for the extractive industries countries. Let me also give you some information about the timing of the fiscal instrument, because it's not all time possible to collect all of the taxes, also to have the share. It depends on the time, and the time frame is very, very important here. And as you see, usually the countries receive the bonus before the starting of the exploration, and some other payment also coming while the exploration, and some also coming in the end of the recovery of all of the costs. And that's why it depends on the it's very depend on the timing. The overall regime should, as much as possible, be matched to time frame for a country's revenue requirements. The timing of different fiscal instruments differ significantly. Signature bonuses are paid prior to the project development, but there is another type of the bonuses. Not only the country paid the signature bonuses, they paid also bonus during the exploration process, and after 5 years, after 10 years. It depends on the contract. It depends on the agreement between the government and the companies. Most probably, all of you know what it means, the bonus. Bonus, this is like the award payment for, especially the companies paid for the government after the sign of the agreement. That's why it's called the signature bonuses. And as you see, the signature bonuses are paid prior to the project development. There is the royalties are paid throughout the production. Income tax might not be paid until after the first several years of production, because the production continues, and after the certain year, the contract are reaching the zero level. Zero level, it means that all of the costs covered by the contract, and then started the produce of the profit oil, profit gas, and the profit minerals, and in that time started also payment of the income tax, payment of the profit tax. Once large development costs are fully recovered, are returned to state, equity might not show up until much later at all. But it depends also the legal regime, because you know the 3 main legal regime implemented in the extractive sector. One of them mostly implemented in the oil and gas sector, It's the production sharing agreement. Production sharing agreement, the government receive more money from the profit oil, profit gas, from the sale of the profit oil and the profit gas. But another agreement, for example, the concession agreement of based on the some taxes and the royalties, and they have the different requirement than production sharing agreement. Let me draw your attention 5 means of the collecting money. Impose charges on the inputs. This is the import duties, VAT for the import. But some countries also has exemption for the oil and the gas companies when they imported the machinery, when they imported some equipment for the exploration of the gas and the oil and the minerals. But many times they impose charges on the input, like the import duties and the VAT for the import operation. The second level, this is the output, collect a share of the output. In this stage, royalty they can pay it in kind and the cash. In kind, it means that the company can share the crude oil with the government, then collect of the share of the profit, corporate income tax. One of the way collect a share of the profit, excess profit taxes. It's also very disseminate during the implementation of the extractive industries contracts. And there is also profit share, profit oil, and the production share, profit oil. This is mostly implemented in the production sharing agreement. Then participate in the ownership of the venture, state equity in a few different flavors, other fees and the bonus, also part of this, the fiscal regime during the exploration of the extractive industries, minerals and the oil and the gas. Let me share with you 2 different schemes. One based on the legal regime of the tax royalty regime, another one will based on the production sharing agreement. First, tax royalty regime. And this regime, the key message need to consider overall government take, not just individual fiscal tools, but nature, timing of each fiscal tools matters to example, the interaction with the prices and the profitability. As you see here, we have the bonus and the rentals. We have here royalty. This is the gross revenue to investors, and the bonus rentals revenue from the petroleum sales. And then we will have the pre-tax profit, and then we will pay income tax. And when we pay income tax, we will reach the after-tax profit. And then we are going to also, as a company, pay research rent taxes. And after they pay the research rent taxes, we will reach the profit after the research rent tax as a company. And then investor will take the dividends and also the government equity. And in the end of this scheme, as you see, they are paying withholding tax to the government, and dividend minus withholding tax also will share the investor return. And all of the payment here in the red color, this is the government revenue. Government revenue consists of the rentals, bonus, and the royalty, income tax, research rent tax, government equity, and the withholding tax. All of same, as you see, this is the government gain during the implementation tax royalty regime in the tax reality regime in the extractive industry contract. And others, the blue one, this is the investors responsible payment, also investor return here. As you see, the government share, the red one, is so big than investor return. Here you can see the production cost, and the production cost also financing from the revenue from exploration of the extractive industry. And the government owns reserves, and the sale reserves on a per unit basis as reserves are extracted. And the all of this payment only possible when the government sign the agreement based on the tax royalty regime. Let's see what happened in the government sign agreement with the company on the basis of the production sharing contracts. And the production sharing contract, production sharing agreement mostly implemented in the oil and the gas exploration. And as you see, we have here the same, the bonus rentals. Then the company received the revenue from the petroleum sales. They paid the bonus rentals to the government. And then the government, the company paid the royalty. And after they paid off the bonus rentals and the royalty, the company profit oil, on the base of the company's profit oil, the government received the share of the profit oil. Share of the profit oil depend on the distribution of the profit oil scheme. Distribution of the profit oil scheme also depends on some indicators. For example, depend on the R factor. R factor, it means that what is the level of the profitability. If profitability high, in this case, R factor also high, it means that the government received more the profit oil than company's profit oil. For example, in my country, we have the main oil field. It's called the Azeri Çırak Güneşli. And on the base of the production sharing contract, our distribution profit oil scheme divided into 3 levels. First level, when started the first stage of the exploration, when the capital expenditure was very high. In that time, the government of Azerbaijan received 30% of the profit oil, and then the government of Azerbaijan received 55% of the profit oil. When started the 55% of the profit oil, and after they reached the contract of the zero level. Zero level, it means that contract paid all of the expenditure, paid expenditure for the capital, for the operational costs, and all of the expenditure, and then started the profit oil. And after the reach of the zero level, the share of the government of Azerbaijan increased. Now the share of the government of Azerbaijan, between the 70 and the 75 percentage. And why it is not fixed? Because it depends on the transportation cost. If transportation costs more than $3 per barrel, in this case, the government of Azerbaijan share equal to 70%. If transportation costs less than $3, in this case, the government of Azerbaijan receives 75% of the profit oil. Now, in my country, the transportation cost per barrel more than $3. That's why the share of the government, the profit oil, $70. And so far, it started in 2006 and 2020. The government of Azerbaijan received $158 billion from the exploration of the Azeri Çırak and Güneşli oil field, oil and the gas field. This is the total revenue from the government on the base of the profit oil share. And as you see here at the same station, the government revenue in the red, investor revenue in the blue, and this is the production cost. Production cost also divided into different costs. I'm going to explain what kind of the costs are expected during the exploration of the extractive industries and during the implementation of the production sharing agreement, implementation of the tax royalty agreement. And here, I want to share you also the extractive project time. Here you can see in the green one, this is the revenue so high and it's so big. But as you know, after the certain times, we will have the peak of the revenue and then started the revenue decline. And revenue also after the certain period is so small revenue for the extractive industries. But here you can see the capital cost. Capital cost usually more than operating costs and the exploration cost. And now we have the exploration cost and then capital cost and then operation cost. Operation cost. This is the long-term cost. It depends on the period of the implementation of the contract. In the end, you can see also again capital cost. What it means in the end of the against of the capital cost? Could you explain why the contract in the end also spend the cost for the capital expenditure? Do you have any idea, any comments about this? Why the capital cost gain in the end of the contract? You know, the end of the contract, maybe you will add your okay, Charlie, for the commission. Yes, you are right, but there can also be capital costs near the end as infill wells are the drilled. Yes. In the end of the contract, there is the cost for the close of the contract, and all of the investors should take the obligations that when contract ends, they are going to close the extractive industries field. It also requires the capital cost and for the commissions as well. And thanks so much, Charlie, for your intervention. And now I want to share some information from the experience of Azerbaijan. And this is the actual figures coming from the Azeri Çıraq Güneşli and the Shafdani's field. We have two main fields. And the blue one, this is the oil field, and the red one, this is the gas field. As you see, oil revenue more than compare the gas revenue. It's also discussed why oil more profitable than gas. Do you have any idea now why we are receiving more revenue from the oil and compared to the gas? But it depends, first of all, the volume of the oil and the volume of the gas. I agree. But what else? What's the differences between the oil and the gas in the context of the commodity trading? And the gas exploration require more cost compare more the cost compare the oil and the another. There is also equivalent between the gas and the oil price. At the same time, gas, you know, it's not easy to transportation for the transportation of the gas. Gas also requires the pipeline, and oil require also pipeline. But you can send also oil by other transportation, not only the pipeline, but gas impossible. If you want to send the gas, I'm talking about the natural gas, but sometimes you can use the liquid gas. Also, you can use another transportation. And one more factors that the gas price always less than the price of the oil. Oil price more stable than the gas price, and the gas price also decline and decrease. Even it's not there is the equivalent between the gas and the oil price, but the gas price decline mostly more than the oil price. And that's why the gas revenue in my country, according even the forecasting now, we are increasing the gas production and the oil production decline in Azerbaijan. But despite of the gas revenue increase, but it's not big revenue compared to the oil revenue. But if here we have the $6 billion, and here we have around $6.7 billion. But anyway, despite the gas revenue increase, oil revenue decrease more than gas revenue in Azerbaijan. But this is our line of our expenditure, because our state budget expenditure $14 billion. Not all of the money coming from the oil and the gas sector, but the most of the money coming from the oil and the gas sector to the state budget. If we keep the same state budget expenditure, in this case, we will have the gap between this line and this line, the expenditure line, this line, the revenue line. But year by year, as you know, the country, the current expenditure is going up because the country is going to increase of the age payment for the state servants. In this case, the gap will be big compared with the revenue and the expenditure in Azerbaijan case. Let me also give you one more example from Azerbaijan. You can see how our production and what kind of the opportunity for the future. Here you can find the different terms about the oil. This is the old oil. Old oil, it means that before the agreement of the production sharing, the Azeri government, the state company produced the oil, because the Azerbaijan was one of the main oil producers during the Soviet time. Even during the Second World War, the Azerbaijan produced 46 million ton annually. In that time, the oil, and this oil also used during the fighting between the Soviet Union and the Nazi Germany, and it played a very important role, Azerbaijan oil and oil products during the Second World War. And I want to say that the history of the production of the oil is very, very old. And the Professor Leila Alieva also shared with you some information about the history of the oil production in Azerbaijan. And this is the early oil in Azerbaijan. And then I talked one of the main the field, Azeri Çırak Güneşli. This is the yellow one. As you see, the big portion belong to Azeri Çırak Güneşli in Azerbaijan. This is the first phase, Azeri Çırak Güneşli, and the second phase, Azeri Çırak Güneşli, and then started the Shahtanis. And new oil opportunities so small. That's why we have the peak 2011. Despite of the peak of production was in the 2010 in Azerbaijan, but the price was high 2011 than 2010. That's why the peak of the oil in Azerbaijan was 2011. In that time, the government of Azerbaijan received $20 billion annually. and then decrease the oil production and the decrease of the oil revenue, despite during the 2011 and 2014, the price was high in the world market, and we received around 18 billion, $15 billion. And then also, as you see, the decline continues in Azerbaijan, and after the maybe 4 years, it will be low level production. But what was the decision? What was the reaction of the government of Azerbaijan? In 2017, they signed a new agreement, almost the same partners, and the main partners, BP from the the UK, and they prolonging this contract until the 2050. And it means that BP is going to invest money for the production, and the production most probably will increase after the certain year, and it will be very, very expensive project because it's easy during the first. This is the 30-year contract, because the contract signed 1994 and until the 2024, and now they also decide to prolong this contract until the 2050. Let's see also another example. This is from Azerbaijan. This shows that what's the role of the price in the distribution of the profit oil in Azerbaijan. But here, gross production and based on the distribution of the profit oil, $25 per barrel. As you see, cost is high and the profit oil is low compared to if the price per barrel increase to $60. In this case, this is the source BP. BP made this the calculation, and it shows that the cost here became high because it should be the same cost, but it depends how many we receive, how fast we receive the profit oil. If we receive the profit oil after the 10 year, it means that during the 10 year, BP is going to invest money, and from the long contract, because it's not BP own money. BP also borrow money for the investment. And in this case, the interest rate also including this cost. And if the price is high, we will have the more revenue, and in this case, we will also reach the zero level fast, and then started the profit oil. In this case, profit oil in the green box, as you know, compared this profit oil is almost 2 times more than. Why? Because the price play is very important role. Price is very, very crucial for the extractive industries, the contract. Let me give you share with you some other example coming from the Mongolia. You know, the Mongolia produce the minerals. There is no oil and the gas, but they focus mostly the minerals. And I want to share with you the Mongolian extractive industries revenue stream. In Mongolia, there is the corporate income tax paid investor to the national budget, and they pay the custom tax when they import some goods, some machinery, some equipment for the production, and they pay the value-added tax. Value-added tax also could be 2 different value-added tax, VAT. First time they are paying the VAT during the import goods, and also import goods based on the VAT, and the second time if they have some contract with the companies, and they paid additional value add tax and fee for the exploration of the mineral sources, royalties, license fee for the exploration and the exploration of the mineral resources, and fee for the recruiting foreign expert and the workers, fee for the air pollution. It's not all countries require the fee for the air pollution. And this is the case of the Mongolia, employers, social and the health insurance, customs service fee, and the dividends on the state investment, advance payment received by the government of the Mongolia, and the petroleum received government of the Mongolia from the production sharing agreement. It means that they have also the exploration of the petrol in the Mongolia, oil royalties, but it's the main the extract industry in Mongolia. This is the mining sector, oil royalties, penalties, total donation and the support given to the public agencies free for use the mineral resources, and also land fee, rental estate tax, a lot of tax implemented in the Mongolia. But it means that there is the big the tax burden coming from the companies. This is also shows the iron ore mine in the Mongolia, how the project and the government cash flow. Here you can see the main payment. This is the excess profit tax, the green bond, and then they also paid profit tax. It means that the excess the profit tax and the profit tax depend on the R factor profitability index. And then they pay the state equity. State equity is not big, it's small. But in the first state equity was big, but there is no excess the profit tax. And the blue one, the royalty, and also you can see some other the payment in the Mongolia experience here. Let me also give you one more experience from the Mongolia. Also, it shows that project cash flow, how it's going, decline and decrease, decline and decrease. But you can see also what's the payment coming from the investors. And now I want also give you one more example coming from the Kazakhstan. You know, the Kazakhstan also has the mineral as well as the Kazakhstan rich oil and gas resources, mostly the oil resources. And this is the all of the significant payment in Kazakhstan, including the oil and the mining sector. The main payment CIT, this is the corporate income tax from the extract industry in the Kazakhstan. The second MPT, this is the mineral production tax. As you know, the 27% and the 37% in 2014 received of the national fund of the Kazakhstan from the mineral companies. This is based on the mineral companies, not oil, the payment, oil sector, only the minerals, mining sector. There is the production sharing agreement. Also, let me production sharing agreement. It means that some the minerals exploit on the base of the production sharing agreement. Some minerals exploit on the base of the royalty taxes agreement. Some minerals also concession agreement. And this is the different payment coming in the different fiscal tools in the Kazakhstan. And I'm going to finalize this part, and then I'm going to go to another part. This is in the end. I want to say that This is the different regime, the taxes regime. We have the different, the progressive regime, and we have the neutral regime in the extractive industries, and we have also the regressive regime. Here, this is the progressive regime, and this is the implemented in the UK, Sierra Leone, and the Ghana. You can see is the difference between the progressive regime and the case of the Ghana, Sierra Leone, and the UK fiscal regime. But now I want to explain how does the government take change with the profitability as commodity prices, production techniques, and the production rate change over time. So does the profit margin for the project. The impact that fiscal tools has a government share of the profit, and the project profit margin increase can be placed into one of the three categories. Natural fiscal, the tools give the state the same share of the revenue, whether profitability increase or decreases. It's not depend on the profitability of the sector, extractive industry sectors. And the progressive fiscal tools, this one give the government larger share of the profit when profit increase. And the regressive fiscal tools, this one give the government lesser share as profit increase, and each option can be beneficial depending on the desired outcomes. The steady flows of the revenues that come from the natural or the regressive fiscal tools can help government with the big auditing the capacity, and they increase the collection, and they ensure that they receive revenue early in the project life cycle. However, regressive or natural tools can discourage investment, particularly for the project with small profit margins, because they require companies to pay the state even when the cost of the extraction are greater than revenues. Progressive fiscal tools, by contrast, are seen to project the interest of the companies during the periods of the low profitability by giving the government an ability to capture a significant share of the windfalls when profits are high. These progressive tools, however, are frequently more difficult to enforce effectively because they require an ability to audit cost and they calculate the profit. And it means that the audit of the cost, it's so important in this case if you are going to use the progressive tools during your collection of the tax from the extractive industries. And the auditing costs should also made by the internationally recognized audit companies, and it is also the additional cost for the audit. It's for the fiscal rules. Is there any question so far about the fiscal regime? Because now I am going to talk the fiscal rules, and fiscal rules based on the fiscal regime. There is the link between the rules and the regime, but I want to ask you, if you have the question, please ask me. Please include your chat book. And I saw the Somai typing. Let's see what she want to ask, and then we will move the fiscal rules. The so interesting rules implemented in the different countries, in the different also extractive sectors. And it depend on the it's a good question, but it's not easy. But I prefer the progressive tools if we use the really we have the ability to audit the cost. And if we can audit the cost, the progressive, I think the progressive is good. Then because the progressive will give the also real the payment. And the Charlie, how important is clarified and the consistency in the fiscal regime as a way to avoid the corruption. So I'm going to talk about how we can avoid the corruption. Thanks, Charlie. But let me give you two different examples. The cost during the extract industry, it's not easy to audit. And there is a lot of facts about the overestimation the cost. For example, I talk about the Azeri-Çıraq-Güneşli field. When the Azeri government signed agreement with the foreign investors, in that time they estimate, it was the initial estimation of the cost Azeri-Çıraq-Güneşli field, $7.4 billion. Now, how many spent in the end of the project? End of the project, spending and the cost of the Azeri-Çıraq-Güneşli increased $46 billion. $46 billion. It means that the 7 times almost increased the cost. The same station was in the Kazakhstan, and as I remember, the Kazakhstan president, the Nursultan Nazarbayev, almost 10 years ago, invited all of the companies at the increase. There is the question, why in the extract industries you promise spending 10 billion, but the spending was increased the 70 billion. The same station was in the Kazakhstan, 7 times they increased the Tengiz field in the Kazakhstan, increased the cost by the investors. This is the I think this is also one of the corruption, because they have the obligation. We are not going to import goods, for example, on the basis of some competitive tenders. They have the partners. One partner located in the Brazil, another in the Argentina. This is the same company working with the BP, for example, the long time. They imported the machinery, they imported the equipment only from these companies. But there is no transparency of the contract between the subcontract between the BP and the other companies about the purchasing the goods, purchasing of the equipment, purchasing of the machinery. This is the one of the main way for the increase of the corruption. Overestimate of the cost during the exploration, especially during the exploration, and how we can avoid one of the audit cost, and also reporting, also the transparency of the contract. They are disclose the information about the contract, but the main contract, not the contract, all of the partners, the subcontract with others. It's very important also reporting the contract, the audit, for the avoid the corruption. Thanks, Somaye. Thanks, the Charlie. That's why Somalia, most countries, they use the different ways. For example, the country, if want to stable the revenue, they prefer the neutral, and because the neutral, it's not depend on the low level revenue, on the high level revenue. They are going to pay the stable, the fixed the payment to the state. But the progressive is good, and the regressive is good, but unfortunately, in regressive, there is a lot of problem because the overestimation of the cost depend on the how you will control of the cost expenditure. It requires the audit of the cost of the expenditure. Let me explain some rules. It's very, very interesting rules. And there is a different rules implemented in the oil and the gas and the minerals and the mining sector. And the one of them, the bird in hand rule, and requires government to spend the interest income accruing from the accumulated research revenue placed in the financial assets abroad. Under these rules, spending level are lower from the beginning, but this ramps up gradually to the levels that allow the economy to adjust. These rules is not widely spread. These rules implemented few countries, one of them, the Norway, one of the vivid example coming from the Norway. And why rules is very important, because without the rules, it's impossible to control of the revenue and revenue management. First of all, require the very comprehensive and also clear rules. But it's also very important follow the rules. Some countries implemented the rules. They have a lot of rules of the revenue and the rule of the withdrawal, rule of the balanced budget, rule of the debit, rule of the structural budget. But it's so important to follow the rule. The problem is they follow the countries like the Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and the Russia. Let me give you one example about this rule and the bird in hand. And one of the first countries established a large research fund was the Norway. After the initial accumulation period, it adhered to the call it bird in hand rule. Here is it allowed to the spend only the revenues from the management of the fund assessed, while the oil revenue per se were channeled into the fund. This policy allowed to accumulate unprecedented ways in Norway's two sovereign funds, which has recently been around $1 trillion, and was often showcased as an extremely approach to managing oil wells. However, one must take into account the country's initial condition. It's very, very important in the context of the democracy as well. Norway did not experience acute infrastructure deficiencies and had already been in the middle income market economy by the time it started to extract oil. By the time it started to extract oil, also Norway was one of the democratic countries. In Norway, established a lot of the democratic institutions. That's why in Norway follow the rules. It's not only they implement, they one of the countries, Norway, follow the rules very exactly. And it was not strongly depend on the oil incomes as most other exporters are. That is why developing countries had to look for other models. But this the bird in hand rule mostly relevant for the countries where there is no lock of the capital. In Norway, there is no lock of the capital. There is no problem with the capital. Under the fiscal spending rule, government can spend in their budget an average 4% of the wealth fund a year, the estimated long-term return to the fund. It means that if the $100 billion, this is the long-term return of the fund for the 1 year, and the country can spend $4 billion from the $100 billion because the maximum $4 billion. But the sovereign wealth fund, the world's largest, invests in the Norwegian state's revenues from the offshore oil on the gas production. It invests up to 60% in equities, 35% in fixed income, and 5% in the real estate. And it cannot invest in Norway. It should invest in the abroad, not in Norway. But as you see here, they mostly invested in the equities. It's so risky. Only 35% in the fixed. In Azerbaijan, Azeri Oil Fund, they invested more than 65% in the fixed income. Fixed income, the interest rate is very, very low, and it's less than the 1%. But the main profit coming from the investment to the equities. But equities profitability is high, but the risk also is high. The 5% in the real estate. Real estate was very good investment before, but now real estate is not good investment. Azeri government also, Azeri government funds, state oil fund of Azerbaijan invests money to the real estate, and they started the sale some of the real estate. They last year they sold in the Milan, one of the office building, and this year the State Oil Fund of Azerbaijan sold the office building in the Seoul. Around they purchased the $450 million, but they sold $421 million after the almost 7 years. But during the 7 years, they also accumulated some money from the rent of this office building in the Seoul. I want to say that due to the pandemic period, real estate also became the risky. The fiscal rules 4% target is no longer appropriate. The IMF said in the statement after the visiting Norway and recommended the spending target about the 2.5 and the 3%, because the assets of the Norway pension fund increasing. It means that every year they can receive more return of the fund. That's why the IMF proposed to the Norway pension fund decrease this percent from 4 to 3 and the 2.5. Let me explain another rule, permanent income rule. Maybe you heard about the permanent income rule. The permanent income rule requires that permanent proportion of the research base is spent annually to sustain consumption by maintaining the constant real expenditure pass beyond a lifetime period of the commodity reserves. The permanent income is computed as a returns on the present discounted value of the research wells. And by research wells, we mean expected revenue from the total commodity reserves, which effectively converts the temporary inflow of the research revenues into the permanent income streams that can be maintained indefinitely. The permanent income rule is more valuable, however, to change in the value of the resources. This rule also imposes faster ramping up compared to the bird in hand rule. Let me also give you one other information, one other rules. This is structural balance rule. The structural balance rule targets government spending to cyclically adjusted revenue. By this, we mean that it allows for the temporary deviation from the long-term targeted balance, and as some of us know, this temporary deviation occurs through changes in the commodity value of the commodity price. For example, in the Chile, they implemented this rule. The Chile response is now considered as one of the best. This major copper producer aimed at protecting itself from the pro-cyclicality sharp saving in the public expenditure that may happen if a country spent most of the peak revenue without considering saving some of them for the period of the low prices. To that end, Chile adopted a structural balance rule, which established upper limit to the amount of research revenues that can be spent each year, and the rule is designed in the way that this limit are roughly set across the year. Notwithstanding de facto annual research revenues, any extra revenues are channeled into the country's reserve fund, which accumulated them for the rainy days, or to the financial airbag and pension fund that function to fulfill the state's pension obligation. This policy helped Chile to stabilize its annual expenditure, avoiding the crowding out effect, and sustain spending in the crisis year. Is helping to overcome them smoothly because they have the reserve fund for the rainy days. They have the financial airbag, security airbag. That's why it's helping to overcome them smoothly. At the same time, it doesn't put the goal of constantly accumulating large long-term reserves, which currently constitute around the 15% of the Chilean GDP. Another rule, it's so simple, hand-to-mouth rule. The hand-to-mouth rule requires that the government spends all the money they receive from the natural resources. The hand-to-mouth rule approach leads to the macroeconomic volatility, lower non-oil GDP growth, and decline non-oil fiscal balance as a share of the GDP. And let me give you one example. Coming from the Botswana. Botswana, Africa diamond-rich economy, has chosen yet another approach. It also decides to use all research revenue solely to finance investment expenditures, exclusively developing infrastructure, boosting non-research economies, sponsoring healthcare and education, which are among the best in Africa. All the investment opportunities must be reviewed. It's very important, and they confirmed by the special independent body and including into the national development plan. Because without this, it's impossible to use this money effectively. Let me share with you what is the advantage and the disadvantage of the rules. Let's start first the bird in hand rule. For the bird in hand rule, the advantage are it ensures intergenerational equity. If you want to fairly distribute money between the generation, with future insurance that future generation also benefit from the research waves of the countries. It also ensures fiscal sustainability and thereby increase the capacity of the country to finance fiscal deficit on a sustainable basis. There are the disadvantages as well. This rule is the most restrictive of all the rules because it does not allow spending before the saving from the resources start to yield interest. Also, their returns on capital are volatile. It can introduce volatility in government spending. So not as much volatility as spending or the revenues would be. In addition, it is not ideal for the countries that have a capital shortage, especially where returns from the public investment, such as the investment in education or health, are higher than their returns from the financial assets abroad. That's why the Norway implemented these rules. Permanent income rules. In the case of the permanent income rule, the advantage are it ensures intergeneration equity, and also it reduces the volatility. Permanent income rule also can accumulate some money for the next generation. There are disadvantages as well. It is not ideal for the capital short countries, just like the bird in hand rule. Also, it can promote social tension, especially where the bulk of the unspent resources are saved and citizens are looking for quick returns on their development fortunes. It means that in the developing countries, it's not appropriate. And the advantage and the disadvantage of the hand-to-mouth rule. For the hand-to-mouth rule, advantages are it ensures the current fiscal balance of the government budget because the government spent all that it received from the natural resources, unlike the bird in hand rule and the permanent income rule. As well, it is good for the countries that have a capital shortage because there is no restriction on how much of this revenue they spend. There are disadvantages as well. It does not make into consideration the level of the absorptive capacity, and where absorptive capacity is low, spending could become inefficient. This is the main disadvantage. The many countries also spend money ineffective, use the hand-to-mouth rule. Many developing countries, mostly in the African countries, in Nigeria and other Angola, other countries, it does not also take into consideration the interests of future generation as need to ensure a fiscal sustainability when the resources are depleted. It also exposes government spending to extremely volatility because the revenues could rise and they fall. But there is a good example in the context of the Botswana. This is also one of the fiscal rules. It's called the revenue rule, short-run revenue rule for the 5 year. And the country should impose the floor for the selling on the revenue entering the budget. For example, in Kazakhstan implemented, in Ghana, Mexico, Nigeria, Timor Leste implemented the same rule. In Kazakhstan, the Kazakhstan National Assembly, this is the parliament of the country, they adopted the fiscal rule based on the revenue rule. According to this rule, the Kazakhstan National Fund, the name of the national fund, Samur Kazakh, can transfer money to the state budget annually, $7.5 billion, plus minus 15%. Why plus minus 15%? Because if the Kazakhstan economy in the recession, in this case, this fixed money, 7.5 billion, the government can increase up to the 15%. If country economic grows positively, in this case, the government can increase this fixed amount, $7.5 billion, decrease the up to the 15%. This is the Kazakhstan rule, transfer money from the state oil fund to the state budget. And here you can see small expenditure line and the revenue. There is the sometimes decline, increase, and if here you can see the smoothly expenditure line, the bottom. This is our deficit, and this is our surplus. And the surplus more than deficit, it's good. In this case, you can also accumulate some money for the future generation. This is the rule of the revenue. Let me share another rule of the fiscal rule. This is the budget balance rule. A permanent constraint on fiscal policy using the sample nominal target. And recurrent expenditure must equal revenue over the cycle, primarily non-oil balance. what it means. The budget divided into two expenditure. This is the current expenditure and the capital expenditure. Current expenditure, as you know, this is the expenditure required for the government, pay for the wage of the civil servant, pay for the social obligation, pay for the administrative expenses, all including the current expenditure. There is also another expenditure of the budget for the financing of the infrastructure construction, for the financing of the purchasing some, for example, the military goods. All of them are including the capital expenditure. And this rule shows that your non-oil revenue should be the same level of the current expenditure. In this case, you will have the budget balance rule. And it means that they will, if there is no any revenue from the oil sector, and the non-oil sector can finance the expenditure of the current aims of the state balance, the state budget. There is also some other indicators implemented during the budget balance rule. Let me give you another. This is the expenditure rule. The expenditure rule is a rule that sets limits of the total primary and the current government spending in nominal terms or real terms, and in proportion to gross domestic product or GDP. They could, should, the GDP could be total GDP of the economy or non-oil research GDP of the economy. You can have the correlation between the total. We have two GDP, the total GDP and the non-oil GDP. It means that we have oil GDP as well. If total GDP minus non-oil GDP, in this case, we will have the oil GDP. Under this rule, the government adjusts expenditure as a GDP change regardless of the level of the revenues. One more rule. This is the expenditure rule, limit on the total recurrent expenditure in absolute terms, in terms of the expenditure growth as a percentage of the GDP. Implemented the Argentina, Botswana, Brazil, Costa Rica, Israel, and Japan. We have a lot of rules. The fiscal rules, one of them is the debit rule. Limit of the public debit as a percentage of the GDP. Sometimes limit 40% of the GDP, sometimes 50, sometimes 60. It depends on the countries. Countries made decision, but for developing countries, I think 40%. This is the critical line, and this is the. Let me give you two examples. One coming from the experience of the Mongolia, another coming to the experience from the Indonesia. In Indonesia, total central and the local government debit should not exceed 60% of the GDP, and Mongolia public debit cannot exceed 40% in GDP. Maybe in your country also they implemented the same approach, but debit rules target fiscal policy through debit sustainability. The rule sets debit targets based on the debit sustainability indicators, and there are two common indicators we see in the literature. The solvency indicator, which is the size of the debit, and the or the size of the debit to total revenues, size of the debit to GDP and the total revenues. And another indicator, the liquidity indicator, is defined the size of the debit service to the GDP on the size of the debit service to the export of the revenues. What it means? It means that there is a two indicators. One of the general, how many percentage of the debit in GDP, how many percentage of debit in the total revenue. And the second indicator, this is the liquidity indicator. What it means? It means that we want to see how capable the government to pay the state debit. That's why there is the indicator service, the debit service, and the size of the debit service, how many percentage in the GDP. At the same time, the size of the debit service, how many percentage of the export revenue. If size of the debit service less than 20% of the export earning, this is the good. If more than the 20% annually, I am talking annually, it's not good for the countries. That's why they have the two different the indicators on the basis of the debit of the rules, debit rules. One. This is the last about the example of the exemptions. Some countries implemented the exemption. For example, the Argentina Congress has repeatedly granted emergency superpowers to the president, leading to suspension of the fiscal law. It's not good, but they use. Ecuador rule excluded public investment for the other priority items for the selling. Japan in 1975, except of the period 1990-93, the government has requested a waiver of the balanced budget for every year. Fiscal rules must be credible, flexible, and they monitor to work properly. And they must be also clear and simple. That's all I want. I already shared with you about the fiscal rules. Now I'm going to move the last part of the revenue management. A lot of conception today. And so far, if you have the question about the fiscal rules, please ask me, and please include your question in the chat box. If not, let me go to the challenges of revenue management. This is the one of the favorite topic of the Charlie. Charlie sent last time his opinion about the challenges in the Timor-Leste. It was very, very important. And let me, before the discussion, the challenges, to draw your attention that the research, the finite resources, non-renewable, prospect of the sustainable rents, potential impact of the revenue on the host status, uncertainty of the resources and the revenue, asymmetric information, also high upfront costs and the long production period created time consistency problem. This is I'm going to explain the briefly, and please take into account that time frame is very, very important. And it's important to recognize that the challenges occur at the different times. In the short term, for instance, country could experience dust stages. Dust stages not long-term challenges, but also the effective of low absorptive capacity, and this is the associated with the inefficient spending. Last time, and the mayor also asked me about the correlation of the dust disease and the research course. Dust disease research course, this is the long period, long-term the problem challenges, but dust disease is the short-term. Dust disease is part of the research course. In the midterm, countries are faced with the effect of the revenue volatility, because revenue depend on the production, depend on the price. That's why the volatility problem the country should face in the midterm as well as the long term. And in the long term, they are faced with the effect of the research excitability, which also has dampening effect of the fiscal sustainability. There is a different policy option implemented. To address revenue management challenges, there are appropriate policy responses that particularly address the following issues. I know Charlie also asked about the optimal size of the spending versus the saving. In our case, now the 75% we already spent and the 25% accumulated for the future generation. spending on current generation versus the future generation. Because if you spend all money now, it means that there is no any money for the future generation. Addressing the effect revenue volatility and the dust disease by ensuring the macroeconomic stability. Another policy option in research-rich countries, the government are often faced with the pressure from the citizens to spend the research revenue on current development priorities in order to increase the economic growth and also to reduce the poverty. Also, the exhaustible character of the natural resources imposes intergenerational and the fiscal sustainability concern on their governments. And we now, as we, that volatility research revenue create uncertainty and the cyclic development outcomes. And how much to spend or save. These challenges affect of the economies of research-rich countries in many ways, and therefore it is important for their government to address the challenges. But in addressing these challenges, research-rich countries, when they decide their revenue management strategy, are confronted with a different policy option. To size spending, that is how much to spend or save, where to allocate the money, and then also which structures are required to ensure that the money is spent efficiently. This is the three main questions. Also, it's important which structure are required to ensure the money is spent efficiently. I'm going to talk about which structure is very important. On how much to spend or save, the appropriate balance between the spending and the saving is different from one country to another countries, and this depends on the number of the factors. For example, the development challenges confronting the countries, the level of the absorptive capacity, debit level, risk of the inflation, and the course of the dust disease. And as you see, the dozens, the factors. Fiscal rules address the issues related to the size of the spending versus the saving. As I said, however, when well designed, they also ensure the best balance between the spending on current generation versus the future generation, as well as ensuring macroeconomic stability. And this is turn, as we know, will lead to more investor confidence in the economy, lower level of the inflation, lower the deficit, lower debit level, and the above all high economic growth. This is the public spending. Consumption, you can spend, increase the money, the wage of the civil servants. You can invest money in the private sector, with the participation of the private sector. You can invest money to the education. A lot of differences, a lot of also the option. This is the pro-cycle expenditure. As you see, the expenditure depends on the revenue. And if we have the price, and in this case, we will go the same line for the price, because the revenue also depends on the price. And it's not good, in this case, you cannot save the money, because how many you receive and you spend the same amount, you are not going to accumulate money. I promise I am going to say which structure are required to ensure that the money is spent efficiently. More importantly, we must be concerned about how to spend the money efficiently, because it's only this that can bring positive development outcomes for the people. But this is usually a feature of the public financial management system of the country. It's often not addressed by the research revenue management law of the countries. It would take different laws and institutions, such as the public investment management laws, professional supreme audit institution, and the effective public financial management system to be able to address inefficiency of spending. The countries that face the challenges of inefficient spending must therefore work hard at the introduce and the building strong budgetary systems that avoid persistent budget expenditure by ensuring that they have effective planning and the procurement practice, research management, so they could be able to address issues of the corruption and the mismanagement of the resources. This and many others are both countries required to be able to spend their research money efficiently and grow that deliver tangible development outcome of the people. And the Charlie, including the question about the how about the corruption. This is the one of the response how they about the corruption. As you say, a lot of institutions require and the strong budget system require development planning, budgeting, cost benefit and the technical review, competitive procurement, monitoring of the project execution, operation and the maintenance, as well as require the accountability, the transparency in the budget spending in the government level. This is the accountability mechanism. This is one of the main institutions for the increase the efficiently spending of the oil and gas and the minerals revenues. But the internal accountability mechanism is the cost benefit of the investment, competitive tendering, pride and the integrity case civil service value, as well as the audit by the auditor general evaluation investment analysis for the good performance, poor performance, I'm sorry, external parliament approval, parliamentary and the civil society consultation. It depends also level of the independent civil society and the exposure of the wrongdoing in the middle. The media, of course, benchmarking exercise, local government, this is the promote honest and efficient expose. Peer group, ethical norm, also peer group disciplinary process. International, you heard about the EITI, audit by the international community, and they promote transparency and accountability in the natural research sector. And they encourage adherence to the international standards, international consultation, join of the international organization, and the convention, anti-corruption, and other conventions. So important in the context of the accountability mechanism. Here, it's very important for the efficient planning, midterm development planning to see what happened with the price, how we can project the price, because the projection of the price in the world market, one of the key instruments for the projection of the revenue for the future. But the midterm development planning also depend on the revenue. That's why the projection is so important. This is the example coming from the Alaska. They projected between the 1985 and 2000, but this is the in fact how the price and how the revenue is going in the Alaska. But the right project is not easy. The rig project is so difficult because the price of the oil, gas, and the other minerals and the commodity depend on the not only the economic situation and other factors, political factor as well, strategic, geostrategic factor. This is the volatility in the Kazakhstan, Russia, and Azerbaijan. The same almost situation where the going it down in 2008, 9, when was the global financial crisis, the same station in Kazakhstan, in Russia, and Azerbaijan. Everywhere government revenue going down, the spending going down, oil price, inflation going down, because depend each others. And one of the way avoid of the corruption, avoid of the inefficient spending, this is the natural research funds. Natural research fund, we have the different kind of the natural research fund. We have the saving, stabilization, sterilizations, ring fencing, development, for the development, economic diversification. Let me give you some example. This is the natural research fund governance deposit rule. It should first adopted the deposit rule, and then natural research funds established, and then you should also adopt the withdrawal rule. How many money you will withdraw from the fund every year, and also where are you going to spend this money, domestic expenditure, and what if you need the investment rules, also how you are going to invest money in domestic, in the foreign investment. You should be also adopted the investment rules. And this is the one fund approach. All of the money accumulated to one petroleum fund. There is also another approach, two-fund approach. And you can see here stabilization fund and the saving fund. In Russia should be stabilization and the saving fund. And in Kazakhstan also they divided the national fund into two groups, stabilization and the saving. And this is the consolidated fund, how the money accumulated the petroleum fund and then divided into two funds, the stabilization and the saving fund. Here also development fund approach and the Hatvik's rule revisited. This is the petroleum fund, also transfer money, the annual budget, and the transfer money to the development fund. They have the consolidated fund and development fund. The example from Russia, the Russians from revenue from the oil and the gas companies, they divided into two parts, revenues from the oil and the gas regions, profit tax, and oil and the gas revenue federal level, oil and the gas transfer, as you see, 40% to budget, and the 20% the reserve fund, and the national welfare fund, 30% national welfare fund. And there is also, it means that the state budget paid more money. Sorry, just it's the phone. And this is the also the one more example from the experience of the Russia fund. In figures, how the oil fund in Russia, how many percentage of the how many in billion dollars the stabilization fund, the reserve fund, the first stabilization fund, and then they divided into two group, reserve fund and the national wealth fund of the Russia, national wealth fund in the Russia. Sorry, just a minute. Now let me go to another. Another information coming in the different countries. As you see, the Algeria, Azerbaijan, the information about how many saving, but it's in 2012 for Azerbaijan, because in that time we have the 32 billion, now we have the 43 billion, 43 billion. And then, yeah, Kuwait, so big in the context of the saving. And let me also share another information. Also, this is the level of the external debt in the GDP. Iraq, Kazakhstan, and Kuwait is very high. Another country is very, very low. Very low. And GDP, Kazakhstan and Kuwait also very high. Now I want to share so few slides and then stop. This is the very important also how to regulate the monitor policy, inflation, and the exchange rate during the oil booms, because there are a lot of when we receive a lot of the export earning, it created the problem for the appreciation of the currency. Then started the problem devaluation of the currency. The currency lost the value. And also, it's very important monetary sterilization, one of the policy response. And most probably some tools made by the central bank, the open market operation, and the foreign exchange swap. Central bank, for example, in Turkey, they have the swap agreement between the, if I don't mistake, between the 2-3 countries, and the one of them, the China. And there is also challenges can be banks may not receive most credit from the central bank. This is liquidity. Now, some countries also faces in this difficult. Also challenge exchange rate, capital control is very important during this period. During this period, that's all I want to share. Maybe one more slide. Yeah, it's policy option for the mitigation dust disease. This is the monetary sterilization, fiscal sterilization, and investing in economic diversification. This is the main policy option for the mitigation the dust disease. And what means the monetary sterilization? Selling the treasury bills, increasing the reserve equipment, and also saving funds, foreign debt repayment. This is the fiscal sterilization. That's why the government is going to establish the sovereign wealth fund. And investing, where investing is very important. Health, education, we said the human development, infrastructure, and high potential the actors. And the infrastructure also important to renew some countries, especially the developing countries. Also, the pros can be very effective, less subject of political manipulation if you have the monetary sterilization. If you have the fiscal stabilization, fiscal sterilization provides real returns for the citizens because this fund will serve of intergeneration distribution of the money. and also can generate the endowment for the future. Most effective option. So in this case, there is also cons because can cause the inflation, can lead to the greater inflation, capital inflows, and the fiscal sterilization also subject to the political manipulation. Here also there is also some cons. In the end, I want also discuss with you the participation, and this is also additional information about the exchange rate regulation. For example, in the Algeria managed float, Azerbaijan crawling band, composite target, the Bahrain they connected the US dollar peg, but the inflation target with the managed float in the Indonesia. It's all of the countries research these countries, and the US dollar peg, US dollar peg implemented in most many research countries. In the end, I want to draw your attention this research paper, and we already received the paper from Jokai about the battle of the China and India in Burma's natural resources. It's also interesting. I also shared with the Professor Leila Alieva, and then we will provide our review, our feedback. But at the same time, I want to discuss with you the research paper in the end of our seminars. And you already select your topic. Only that I want to ask Charlie, maybe Charlie also present his topic name. The topic your topic is acceptable for us, but if you want to focus on the one country and the comparatively by country, it's also acceptable. But now we have the topic, as I said, the Yokai shared with us the topic about the battle of China and India in the Burma's extractive, and also Somalia shared the topic reconceptualization research course in the research rich countries. Also, it's so interesting, and I read makes sense. Add also some part of this paper. Also submit the long essay, and this is the some requirement for the long essay. We can this is for the discussion, and the deadline in the end of the let me say open the syllabus. Deadline should be end of this course. But this is not a commitment. This is only a proposal for you for your the essay. And if you define the problem, you already defined the problem. Mert also submit his the paper. Also, paper also very interesting. Let me open also the Mert paper about the fiscal rules. Today we talk about the fiscal rules, natural resource revenue management, the fiscal policies. The name of the Mert paper. As for the deadline, I won't just should be end of our end of. Let me open the here. Let me stop and open. syllabus. Now we will see our syllabus. Just a minute. Charlie Timurles has not been able to follow many of the expectations. Years ago, when he established sovereign wealth fund and the fiscal regime. Here, longest say conclusion the big 10. We have the 3 more big. At the end of our course, it will be better in the last time in our seminar before the last our meeting in the week 10 receive your long essay. But if you add some additional part of your short essay, I think we will have in this case the long essay. The short essay acceptable. Is there any other questions about the essay and about?
But Professor, will we have time after the last week to give a feedback to the long essays? So there should be, that's why it's written that the long essays due on week 9, right?
Yeah.
So
and if you receive the before or the last class, you can review and then discuss during the last class.
okay, so it will be actually week 9, not week 10, huh? They will submit their long essays, and then at the last class we will discuss the essays, right?
Right. Yeah. We need also time. We need time for the review, and it will be better if we receive the in the
As it's on week 9.
week 9. Yeah. Even during the week 9, and then we will have the 1 week for the review, and then last week we'll talk about the last week. We can discuss all of the 4 for the essay.
Unless there is a special.
Also we need the time because I propose to make the presentation in the short presentation, because you prepare this paper in the end of our class in the week of the 10. I'm going to each week of the 10 is your class, Leila Khan. You should divide our class 2 parts. One,
okay.
maybe a short presentation. We should finalize the presentation during the first hour, and then second hour we will discuss the papers. And for paper, I mean, if the 10-15 minutes,
okay,
including
so it
the
will be
discussion, will take the 1 hour also, additional 1 hour.
Okay.
Is there any comment, any intervention about the paper? And also I received this the question, IMF's peak rule. Could you, Mert, explain a little bit more what do you mean the IMF peak rule? And you can also send me the email. You mean the permanent income hypothesis? Okay. Permanent income. It's yeah. I already talked about the permanent income and hypothesis, and you know the permanent income. For example, the countries like Azerbaijan, permanent income line. If we receive the $158 billion during the 2006 and the 2020, during the 15 years, means that the permanent income, if we divided the 158 billion or 16 years, it means that permanent income $10 billion. This is our permanent income. And but if we spend money, compare the permanent income during this period, for example, the $5 billion, in this case, we will avoid the volatility problem because some year we receive the 20 billion annually, some year we receive the 5 billion annually, some year, but for example, this year our oil revenue was $3 billion. If we accepted the permanent income hypothesis, in this case, and our expenditure and our revenue was our expenditure was steadily, and we avoid the volatility of the expenditure and the revenue. But I show how the Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and the Russia faces the problem of the volatility of the revenue. I'm going to send you also additional information about the permanent income hypothesis, because as I saw, you are going to submit your paper about the fiscal rules and the fiscal policy. I will send you additional information about all of the rules. You can also use our presentation. Everybody can use the presentation during the preparation of your long essay. And all of the presentation I upload to this system. You can also download presentation. This presentation as well from the system. And also we upload the reading materials, the system, and I upload today for the today's the lesson reading material about how to handle the macroeconomics of oil wells. This is the published by the Jeffrey Sachs. You know the Jeffrey Sachs, the Nobel awarded economist. He also devoted a lot of publication on the revenue and the development.
Can I make a small ad for the next lecture? We're going to discuss in details how the oil dependency affects the democratic institutions, and more specifically, such an important institution as opposition. I uploaded already one article. There were two sources indicated, but I uploaded only one because the other one, the one which we did jointly with my colleague from Belarus, it's still in the publication process, so it's not published, but I will tell about this study during my presentation. So we can't really quote it or something, but I definitely it will sort of be quite significant part of our discussion tomorrow, next time. So I hope to see you all and to get your very valuable feedback and sort of contributions. Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you, Professor Ibadoghlu.
Thank you, Leila Khanum. And also the Mert asked about the presentation. You should make the presentation around the 7 minutes presentation. But today I talk about the general approach of the fiscal policy and the fiscal regime, fiscal tools, and the policy response. You can focus one of the policies. Not important to focus all of them. You can focus one of the tools. You can also make some comparative analyze between the 2, 3, and the policies. I think this will be acceptable. Yeah, please do more narrow presentation. At the same time, also the others, please finalize your paper and submit before our class number 9. And then also we will welcome your presentation, the short presentation during the last class number 10. That's all I want to share today, and thank you so much for your participation, for your attention, for your patience. And now it's so long presentation, 70 slides, but we are here very restricted period. That's why I want to share more information. I hope it will be help you in your future research and the future teaching, future working career. Thanks once again. Yeah, Charlie, thanks for your good also intervention. Have a great day, everybody, and see you in the next week. Have a nice week ahead, Somalia. Thank you. See you, Jokai. See you, Mert. See you, Charlie. Ilham, thank you so much for your participation, for your contribution. Bye.
Sonradan şarkı yakışık Gubad Bey, çok sağ olun.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And how I can turn the video? I should turn video only. Yeah. Okay.
No,
cool.
but it started again. No, it started again. I think you should just push the button, the red button, and that will stop. No.